Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 16 of the Mega Alumni Podcast. I'm Julia Taylor. I work in the AFCAD research group over at the Aerospace Research Center, and I'm a aerospace engineering PhD student here at OSU. I have co-host Lillian, if you want to introduce yourself. I can't hear you.
We
Lillian, we can't hear you.
we can't hear you. Sorry.
Seamless start.
I know this happened to me during a meeting. I think it's Teams. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let me start that. My name's Lillian. I am a third year PhD student. I work over in Scott. I'm kind of in between labs, so I'm in the thermal material labs and also I'm an MDL. So I work on transport properties like thermal conductivity and MEMS devices.
Awesome. All right. And we are joined here by Dr. Colin Trussa. It's not every day or every episode that we get an aerospace guest, so I'm really excited about this. But Dr. Trussa completed his bachelor's through his PhD here at OSU. So has a really nice perspective about what OSU has to offer and experiences that I'm sure we're all excited to hear. But yeah, so I guess to kick it off, before we get too much into the weeds, what got you kind of into aerospace in the first place? Was there kind of like a defining moment, or was it like an interest with like, I don't know, developing over time? Everyone has their own story kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't anything flashy or special. It was more of I got into the program. I always did kind of enjoy aerospace or just the idea of aircraft. I had never flown on a plane deep into like undergrad. I think even grad school, I had first flown on a plane. Oh no, sorry, that's wrong. I flew on like a single, like a regular general aviation through an internship. But yeah, it was kind of a yeah, it wasn't truly like a big plan from the beginning. I knew I wanted to do engineering. I kind of got a feel for what some mechanical engineering interns were experiencing, and I kind of realized it wasn't up my alley, so I figured I might as well go into a quote unquote specialization, at least in something I had a little bit more passion about. So yeah, that was the intended goal. But it was always kind of funny talking with my aerospace friends that more people than you expect never fly. So
Mhm.
I didn't necessarily feel out of place in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you expect to go to grad school or were you looking at other plans after undergrad?
Yeah, that's a good question too, because I had no intention at all to go into grad school as an undergrad. Um, I had heard too many horror stories of like data falling out from undergrad students, or even in like like political conflicts where like things were delayed and was not on my schedule at all. But then uh, I went through some uh, internships, and again that got into the idea of like, well, I don't necessarily want to do this the whole time, and kind of one thing led to another. Met a good advisor and realized what I could be doing in terms of grad school, and that was what I went with. And yeah, because I had on the topic of like data losing, I had a internship friend who knew someone who had to like almost permanently delay their PhD because their whole data set they got from someone else, which again, not ideal, turned out to be bunk. So they spent, yeah, like whole research analysis just done, and it was almost like a year left in their program. So luckily we don't experience it, at least in the lab I was always working, because we make our own data, which again is
Mhm.
kind of the most fun part. But yeah, hearing some of those horror stories definitely put a chill into me initially thinking about grad school.
Yeah, no doubt. I haven't heard any horror stories quite as bad as that one, but I mean,
Yeah,
geez, really
yeah.
intimidating.
I guess that's a testament to OSU, because that was like I want to say like junior or sophomore year of undergrad, and then sticking around long enough, I saw what it did offer. So yeah.
Yeah. I was the same way. I had no intention of going to grad school. Here we
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm so speaking about sticking around. So you did your full higher education at OSU and are now a postdoc. So what made you stay at OSU, especially for grad school? And then what made kind of like the program or the labs that you participated in a good fit?
Yeah, I think part of it was the hard part is always finding a area to work in or a research group to work in. I know OSU does their best to like have outside students tour the labs and everything, but it's kind of hard to replace the fact that you've been there for 4 years, knowing
Mhm.
how the labs are, knowing what work they do. So that was a big driving factor for me. Being an undergrad, I knew ARC was very interesting to me. I knew we had these capability of wind tunnels, and I had the time to at least develop some relationships with my advisors. So that was the hardest part, actually being able to have the time to kind of meet all the different professors and not have it forced into one day of touring. That was pretty invaluable. Again, not
Mhm.
not helpful to outside OSU students, but that helped me really select it. So it helped me
Mhm.
identify my advisor, find the project, and identify ways I can stay within. And I really liked my project mainly because it was very freedom. I had a lot of freedom in it. I was able to be a graduate teaching associate or assistant associate for the whole time, which let me kind of pick my own project. So there's a lot of legwork involved in that, making sure it was actually worthy of, master's and then of course PhD level work. Um, but that was like the big selling point. It was like I can actually devote a large chunk of my time, my life, onto a project I'm very interested in and
Mhm.
have a lot of ownership over. And that, of course, gave me the ability to run a wind tunnel. So that was
Mhm.
also kind of a a very big selling point.
Yeah.
Build and put it into a tunnel. I mean,
Mhm.
it's like Aerospace 101.
Yeah, it's like what everyone kind of dreams of is to
Yeah,
be able to have something be like, oh my gosh, it's actually real.
yeah, yeah. It's easy to make a CAD or a drawing, but actually seeing data from it is very, very rewarding.
So speaking of rewarding data, we can move on into some of the more research questions.
Yeah.
And we were wondering if you could give us a quick summary of your research experiences. So what topic, what are your areas of interest?
Yeah, my main focus was on applied aerodynamics, specifically with active and passive flow control methods on a delta wing. All that being said, using these active flow control methods to impact the fluid dynamics over the main fluid structures on the delta wing. So knowing how to do like minute impacts to then have a broader impact or a broader change, resulting into the aerodynamics of the model itself. So like how can I inject flow in this area and how does it actually impact the broader characteristics of the model? So my own research was always around this 60-degree delta wing, and I had a lot of different changes I put onto it in terms of, passive flow control devices with moving these wing tips that I've put on the model, and then also implementing active flow control devices to further impact the broader aerodynamics. And when I say wingtips, think about uh, like you have a delta wing, and on the sides, your wings can go up or down like that. Or if you're familiar with the XB-70 Valkyrie, we have one out at Dayton, Wright Pat Air Force Base Museum. Got them named backwards or whatever. But yeah, that's a good example of it. And that was really the foundation or the influence of the whole design. It was kind of like, do you want to do that more and then see what else those wing tips can do? I'm like, yeah, definitely. So
Awesome. I mean, you kind of answered it there at the end. But I mean, is that kind of like seeing, like having the Air Force Museum and then like having that kind of preliminary research interest? Is that kind of what sparked your interest in the Delta Wing specifically, or like,
yeah, this also, I guess, goes back to one of your initial questions, why OSU or why I stayed around. I
Mhm.
had my senior design course. We design aircraft for a given mission, and we try to meet that mission. Um, yeah, by designing our own aircraft from a white sheet design yeah. My team, we were doing a supersonic business jet, And I was from the very beginning very interested in the Valkyrie and trying to take those design cues into my senior design project. Luckily, through all the arguing, a lot of my design cues were able to stick around. But that's, you make compromises, but the biggest thing I held on to was the deflected wingtips.
Mhm.
So my advisor, Dr. Whitfield, knew I was very, very interested in that just because it's his class. He taught the design. He knew how much I enjoyed the project. That's when he said, well, do you want to keep doing that in some way in
Mhm.
terms of master's degree? And then yes. So yeah, it I couldn't tell you a pinpoint reason why I like the Valkyrie beyond it looks cool. Delta wings, you don't really see much,
Mhm.
and the Concorde and all those supersonic aircraft are just really sleek looking. So having any kind of impact into that realm is very interesting to me.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of funny how some things like you don't necessarily have an explanation of like why you're interested in it, but it just clicks in your brain. You're like,
Yeah,
that's what it is, you know?
yeah, yeah. Like some aircraft people love, but I hate the look of. But other times, like yeah, the Valkyrie isn't beautiful. It's kind of just a tube with a big delta wing,
Mhm.
but something about it, I like it.
Like, she's beautiful to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm mechanical background. I have not done any thing related to aircrafts. So could you explain what um a deflected wingtip actually does to the airflow?
Yeah, so if we go back to the Valkyrie, the conventional use was for supersonic aircraft. And when you would deflect it downwards, so like towards the ground as you're flying, it would help with a little bit of free quote unquote lift. So you're kind of riding a Mach wave. Again, quote like loosely, that's kind of what you get. But the biggest thing is it fixes a stability problem. So you typically want an aircraft to be statically stable, meaning if it experiences any kind of perturbations, its natural inclination will be to go back to a steady and level state. But that reaction shifts a bit when you move into the supersonic regime. By deflecting those wingtips, you're almost negating that shift. So going from subsonic to supersonic, you have like a not necessarily a full state space change, but your stability characteristics will change. By deflecting them, they don't change anymore. So where that comes into my research, it was, well, what actually happens in the subsonic regime? We know what it does in the super. There really wasn't a lot of data at all out there in terms of the subsonic regime, or even if they were deflected in different orientations. Um, so I kind of filled that gap because, again, when it was studied, it was really only with the XB70, and maybe there was something in the files deep in Northrop somewhere, or no, North American, where they maybe looked at it in the low speeds, but I couldn't find it. So that was lucky for me. But what I found was when I deflected it upwards, so again, nothing really published in that regard, I would get a significant stability shift in the subsonic regime, going from a very stable configuration, stable even when it was deflected downwards or not deflected at all, to be completely unstable. So in that case, you'd get some kind of perturbation and it would just fly into the perturbation, whether it be a nose up or nose down. And typically, with like transport aircraft, if you want a stable aircraft, you don't necessarily want it to be fighting you into a departure kind of setting. But when it comes to fighter aircraft, you don't want the aircraft fighting you to instigate a kind of maneuver. So if a little flick of the wrist in terms of the pilot input, very minimal pilot input, has these massive reactions from the jet, that's best cases for high maneuverability. And that's what these wingtips are able to provide.
That's awesome. It's cool how I when you started this research, did you know that that was a gap, or was that
No,
something that your advisor kind of
I
steered you to?
I'm sure he knew or had an idea. It's kind of the things with advisors. They always know more than they let on. And yeah, you're always shocked. So I guess I shouldn't be shocked if he did know. But yes, um, I did not know at all. And it was a happy coincidence as I was going through my thesis. I'm like, oh, there really isn't that much out there on this. And then going into PhD, it was not necessarily easy, but uh, it was less time consuming for me to even decide, has this been done before? It was more focused on how can I get a good engineering question out of this or PhD level question out of this. So yeah, it was a happy coincidence. very happy.
Awesome. So you kind of answered my next question. So I'll just proceed on to the next section, where it's kind of like PhD process and grad school in general.
Hmm.
But what were your expectations going into grad school? I know you kind of touched on that. But how did reality kind of compare to that?
I guess I don't really think I have a good I kind of saw what was going to happen and it was what I expected. Um, I knew it would be kind of a continuation of undergrad, working late but kind of set your own hours.
Mhm.
Um, and I went in knowing I wanted that. Again, coming from my internships, after every summer, I was kind of ready to go back to school, or at least that lifestyle.
Mhm.
Um, and not saying anything about the internships. I loved working where I did, but I guess the freedom of doing exactly the project you wanted was enough for me. I guess enough
Mhm.
to, take the lows of classes because no one likes studying for a test, but it's a necessary evil.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess I knew it would be a lot of work, but I knew it could afford me a lot more freedom, and I really appreciated that.
Was there anything that you thought would be easier in grad school that turned out to be more of a challenge or vice versa?
Mm. Yeah, I guess yes, I did not quite anticipate how long everything takes. Um, yeah, it just like, if you're running your own experiment, even if it's computational, experimental, I've definitely found if I think it takes a week, it takes a month. Like, nothing is quick. And if you try to do it quickly, things will break or things will fail. So you might as well just accept the fact it's going to take time. And if you're rushing, it's bad news. So yeah, I guess that is one thing I didn't even think about. It was more of a case of, well, I'll do it. I'll get the data. We'll see what happens. Not the
Like,
whole rigmarole.
yeah. And with all the ups and downs of grad school, I was wondering if you ever like thought about maybe stopping after your master's or stopping
Mm.
during, after your PhD, or if there were any times where you considered walking away.
Yeah, I didn't. Again, not a very glamorous answer for
No, that's
for
a good
this
answer. I
podcast.
mean, it's the best
I
answer to hear.
I mean, there were definitely hard times. Like, no one wants to write a paper. At least I hate writing papers. I hate writing, but it's a necessary evil. Or it's part of the job. But yeah, like staying up late till 3, 4 a.m. getting data sucked, but also it's kind of part of the fun. Like you're
Mhm.
truly doing it on your own. And getting friends to help was always great. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was ever to the point of like I need to quit. I think those only ever those thoughts came up were if I like we're thinking of the worst cases of, quals or candidacy. It's like, well, if I don't make this, what are the options?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's really most where it came in, where I
Mhm.
was thinking about it.
That's good. I mean, grad school is hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, not even sure if you want to stay or not would be
Yeah.
even harder. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's clear that you were in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked out, knock on wood. Luckily so far.
Hey, it will continue to work out. Um, so I guess as a postdoc, what does your day-to-day look like? How's it different from being a PhD student? Is there anything that, I don't know, what does your day look like? I think that's just kind of my biggest question.
Yeah. It's the same really as a PhD student, maybe with more work or just more being better at time management.
Mhm.
Because at least in my case as a postdoc, I was also teaching while also having research duties. So it was kind of like a really good preview of what academic life in terms of like being a professional at a school or something like that, or a faculty member. Um, so yeah, it was kind of like a practice run, like a very loose practice run.
Mhm.
Um, at least with towards the end of your PhD, I don't know if both of you are there yet, but you kind of take for granted how much work classes are because you no longer take classes. So getting back into the role of, actually doing two things that aren't remotely connected at all was a good thing to experience because, classes are way different than the research. And moving back from only focusing only on research into then also teaching, yeah, it was a good experience.
Awesome. With the postdoc, do you like mentor more people or other PhD students?
Yeah, I was on the committee for a couple of our master's students at least through the flight vehicle design group, again with Dr. Whitfield. So yeah, it's more of a case of if you seek out those kind of experiences, usually you can find them because someone will always be willing to have your help when it comes to mentoring or helping out other graduate students.
Awesome. Yeah, so okay, so post PhD, did you always plan to stay in academia or did you think about going other places?
Yeah, yes, I'm interested, still very interested, trying to stick around in academia. I love the teaching. But I've definitely kept ties with a lot of industry because it's definitely one of those things, I see the benefits of both, I guess, and it always comes down to what don't you want to do or what are you going to go for. And in my mind, because academia is kind of hard to get into, if I have the chance, I'm going to take it. So yeah, that's how I'm looking towards it.
Um, so you kind of mentioned this a bit earlier, maybe just very kind of quickly, where you mentioned kind of like feeling like the owner of your own research and your own work. Um, I feel like many grad students like consider their research as a project given to them until there's kind of like a moment where they're like, oh, I'm now leading this. This is my research kind of thing.
Mhm.
Was there a specific point in your journey where you kind of felt that ownership and that kind of switch?
Yeah, I think it was master's in the PhD because it was really the point of realizing this is new. Um, yeah, yeah, I think that was really the point because at that point it was kind of like a idea from my advisor, again, built on my own interests, but it was like, well, I'm doing the project. Um, Masters you don't typically have a lot of ownership over, but once I did realize with the PhD, yep, pretty new. I am going to do something different. It's necessary for the PhD, but also truly having complete control over, how I'm testing, what I'm testing, how it's actually getting done. I think that was the biggest moment. Because it was no longer like, well, someone coming to me, like my advisor, so we're going to do it this day, how do you plan to do it? Or, giving you a little bit more structure. PhD was all on you, or is all on me. It will be all on you, is all on you. So yeah, that was the biggest time.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. I think we're on to our rapid fire questions, unless Julia, you want to elaborate more on any other questions.
I think I'm good. I mean, I really appreciated your answers to the questions. There are some folks that I think get out of grad school and they want to like embellish things, but I think it's really nice to hear like, no, like it was kind of like this.
I mean, yeah, everything has good and bad in it, right?
Yeah.
So as long as you, I guess, know what the potential bads are,
Mhm.
like knowing I could be working late night in a wind tunnel probably is bad to some, but in the moment it was pretty fun. Um, Again, control over that kind of stuff is great. So it was, but if you don't want to do any kind of practical experimental work, that is a nightmare for you, and you'd much rather be stuck behind a computer. In that moment, I was very much in the boat of let me be in the tunnel. So
I did have a quick question. How you said you kind of wanted to stay in academia if you were given the opportunity, and you like the teaching aspect. So would you be looking for like a position at an R1 school or would you be at another kind of
yeah,
sector?
I will be teaching this next year also as a lecturer. So I'll be at OSU teaching a couple classes also. So yeah, stick around as long as I can, was the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like the focus of teaching you get from a professional practice kind of position. If either of you have done FAST, I
Yeah.
recommend it. Okay. Even if you're not in academia, just knowing that that's an option and knowing kind of what it all entails is very, very useful. But yeah, from that I gathered I was more interested in FAST because it, or sorry, but the clinical because it enabled me to kind of keep my hands in the mud of the practice, doing the engineering while also a lot of the teaching, again, which I love.
All right. So now we are on to our rapid fire that aren't really rapid, but
Of course.
we'll still ask. Um, do you have a favorite conference you've been to and why?
I went to aviation in Chicago one time. Really enjoyed that. It's hard to say if it was because of the content or it was just a lot of my friends were there. We saw some fun presentations about like explosions and
Mhm.
how explosions were measured and all these different things on like rocket pits. So that was really cool. But also Chicago's a great city, so it was kind of a perfect storm.
Mhm.
That was one of my favorite ones.
Awesome.
What is the best piece of advice a mentor ever gave you?
Yeah, I think it was an axiom from another person, but keep it simple, stupid. Uh,
Yep.
no need to overcomplicate. Like, and I've kind of always ran with that. It's been helping me or keeping me safe. Like, it doesn't need to be complicated. Don't do it. If it requires me to move something instead of pressing a button to do it, I'll always make myself move it. Less things to break in my mind. So yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's definitely a favorite. Um,
Of course,
where
I
can
wasn't being
people?
called stupid, but it was, it's the saying. It's from
Yeah.
was it Kelly? Oh, I can't remember his name now. That's a crime. The Skunkworks author.
Oh,
Oh,
this is
or
really
not
interesting.
author, but he's like the grandfather of the Skunkworks program. Kelly, give me a second. Kelly Johnson. There we go.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
I always thought the keep it simple, stupid. There wasn't a comma after the simple, so it's kind of like simple, stupid is kind of like hyphenated, and it's not
I
directly.
see. Yes, that's a good way to think of it. Yeah.
So where can people find you or follow your work if you want people to follow your work?
Um, I mean, I think I've got a research gate. I guess you can see my published works in my conference papers, my journals. I had a one journal in AIAA AV, or no, the Aircraft Journal of AIAA.
Mhm.
I'll have a couple soon, more from my PhD work and then from my current work as a postdoc. Where that lands is not quite known yet. But I guess, research, Googling, searching, that's great. And then, yeah, OSU around ARC. I will be hopefully more this coming year. Um, but also OSU doing some teaching.
Mhm.
Scott, basically.
Um,
Yeah, I don't really have socials. I don't know.
that's okay. Um, okay. For students who are on the fence about going to grad school, do you have any advice to determine whether or not it's kind of a fit for them?
Yeah, I think again, very biased. I'd say go for it, especially if it's paid.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's not a lot, but 2 years, or even if you do the accelerated BS to MS, I think is very worth it just to get a feel for if you like it, and it will help with your at least your career aspects, like trying to find a job, in my experience at least, and hopefully in yours in the next couple of years when you guys are looking for stuff. Um, but yeah, because typically at a company, you're not going to be able to say, I want to do this and have all the freedom you likely will have as a grad student in terms
Mhm.
of the project and how you work on it. Um, so yeah, I'd say go for it. Again, biased. I went through all of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I remember some of my undergrad professors, they always were like, you can always apply for jobs, but there's only like naturally 2 times a year where you can apply for grad school, so you
Mhm.
might
That's
as
a
well.
that's a very good way to put it too. And I remembering also some of my logic, I knew if I left school, I wouldn't have it in me to go
Yeah.
back after getting used to the lifestyle of industry. Um, so that's another way. Like if you think you have it in you, again, tests, studying, stick with it because you lose those muscles. Like if you like even a year off, it takes a lot to get back into it. So
Mhm.
I'd say go for it.
Awesome. What do you think makes a good advisor-student match?
Oh yeah, that's tough. I guess just being able to know the dynamic, I guess. Like having good communication and understanding of what the expectations are.
Mhm.
That's always very important. So yeah, knowing going in, you're expected to do what you're expected to do. And being able to talk to your advisor when something goes wrong. Yeah, advisors can definitely be intimidating. They're smart, they got PhDs, but if you break something, as long as you took all the steps proper before it broke, hopefully you are on the right side of that. But
Mhm.
even going in, I broke something, it was my fault, that's important. So I guess having the ability to talk freely in that sense with your advisor, not being afraid. No one wants to be afraid of their boss, but it is kind of part of it. But you are students, so you do need to be able to learn from your mistakes. Um, and I think, again, another big thing instilled in me is that if you're even remotely questioning, ask me. That was very, very important and useful because if you're running experiments, you don't want to find out you did it wrong with your question after it already broke.
Mhm.
So having that open bit of communication and dialogue is very important.
Mhm. Yeah, I think also coming from a different institution where I got my undergrad, and coming to OSU kind of like blank slate to get over that hump of like, how do I approach this person? Or this is someone that I haven't really interacted with. The intimidation part is really big too. It's really easy to intimidate me, but
Well, I mean, and I guess the nice thing again to talk up OSU is that a lot of them are that way. Like
Mhm.
they're definitely smart. They're definitely seemingly intimidating, but you talk to them, they're people too.
Mhm.
They've broken stuff. They've made mistakes. They know where it comes from. Hopefully it's not at a deadline or anything like that. And of course, that's the human reaction of being pissed.
Mhm.
But yeah, they know exactly where you're at because they did it too.
Mhm.
So yeah, just getting over that first hurdle of professionals, pros in the field, it's always helpful.
Awesome. Um, Julie, you can ask that next one.
This is one that I think is a good question because I've working at the Arc, you kind of hear these stories, but everyone has their own. Do you have any wind tunnel or lab war stories, failed tests, or there's one
Hmm
about a raccoon that I've heard. But
Uh,
anything that comes to mind for you?
I don't have any of those glamorous ones. Again, I was like not cavalier. I was very careful. So luckily nothing truly bad happened. And I know you've heard the catastrophic rotor failure. I saw that, but that wasn't me, of course.
Mhm.
Um, I guess the biggest is again not glamorous, not fun. Just when you run the tunnel, any new sound you freak out about. It's old, but it's kind of a war horse.
Mhm.
So like there are cases of like having to modify the tunnel because of the fans rubbing, not realizing why I'm hearing this, and then just taking an angle grinder to the metal ring and making it not rub anymore. Um, it's like that kind of stuff. Jokingly thinking, oh, if I stand in here when it's running, is this going to be okay? Didn't do it, but yeah. Yeah, nothing glamorous. Luckily, nothing broke. I never had to worry about weight, so I made everything much stronger, much heavier than necessary, because it was never going to truly fly. Um, I did experience some breakages just because of some sensitive equipment, but luckily it was never bumped up against the deadline, and it wasn't me who broke it, luckily. Um, but yeah, knock on wood, nothing truly catastrophic. Yeah, nothing like the critters getting into the tunnel. Um, I don't think there's anything been that bad. Yeah, I guess let me try to think. Yeah, it was always tangential. I was always around when it might have happened to someone else, but never truly my stuff. Yeah,
Well, that's always the best position to be in, you know?
Yeah.
yeah,
You hear the stories and you can react to it, but you can walk
yeah,
away.
yeah. The
Wasn't
rotor,
me.
yeah. Did you has did he talk on this podcast? Um Isaac? Did he talk
I
about
think
his rotor
so,
thing?
actually. Wait,
Out of I thought I saw him on this. If he
I
Yeah.
think it
hadn't
was
talked about
before
it.
Lillian and I took over as
Okay.
hosts, but
We've
yeah,
only done like
I think so.
I think 3 or 4.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully he talked about it because it
Mhm.
was scary. We had all the
Oh yeah.
safety precautions up, but man, that was yeah, that was something to see.
Well, we'll keep it that way. Okay,
Yeah,
no
it's not
scary stories. We'll just
truly not my story. Yeah.
awesome. Okay, so I guess the very last thing that we kind of finish off episodes with is just to kind of ask if there's any general advice or anything that you wish to bestow on the listeners. Could be about anything, grad school,
Life.
life.
Um, I guess I can't think of anything profound beyond kind of how I've answered already. Hopefully you find a good advisor that works with you. Um, Having that relationship click is very important. You work with them for 5+ years.
Mhm.
Um, Being able to talk with them and ask the questions you need to ask is very important. So I guess maybe that's the most important thing. I mean, generic, you hear it even at the beginning of every grad school tour, but yeah, hopefully you have a good working relationship and you can make one.
Yeah, awesome.
It's always the best advice.
Mhm.
Yeah, easier said than done, I know, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it does make your life so much easier
big
because,
time.
grad school
Mhm.
sucks at times, but at least you can communicate with your advisor about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be terrified because something broke, not of your accord, but yeah, yeah, it's very important.
Cool. So I think that's all the questions that we have. But yeah, thank you for joining us and letting us ask you so many questions.
Yeah, of course.
Um, but yeah, Lillian, do you have anything else?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining. It's very refreshing to hear about someone's story that isn't like the crazy ups and downs. Like a tried and true, like good
Mm.
post grad type of situation. So I'm
Yeah.
glad it's out there.
Have there been bad interviews or really bad stories?
I mean, I think the turmoils and,
Mm,
the like, should I stay? Should I go? Or like maybe
Mhm.
having to transition into like different situations or
mm.
ditch a project or, funding issues, all
Mhm.
Yeah,
this stuff that
Yeah.
I think might take more of a toll on someone, and
yeah,
whether or not they want to, stay.
Yeah. And the
So
yeah.
advisor relationship too. I mean,
yeah,
you
the
kind of
advisor
get everything
relationships
mixed into the
always.
pot. So
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was always it took a second, but to get kind of the solidified TA position that was a bit questioning at the very beginning for me,
mhm.
but luckily it was kind of a very specialized TA role for the design courses. So that was nice to kind of once I got that more concrete, so I didn't have to really worry about um, the funding aspect.
Mhm.
So yeah, the whole tied funding with the project, it's very complicated. So like hopefully you like your project because again, yeah, your money's tied to it. Um, so yeah.
Mhm.
Luckily, yeah, again, not a usual case, but I did have a nice kind of cushy setup in that sense.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we shall release you into the wild now.
Great.
But thank you again. And yes, I hope everyone watching, listening, enjoyed episode 16, and we hope to see you in episode 17 when we have a new guest to be named.
Yes, stay tuned.
All right. Well, thank you. And yeah, thank you, Dr. Trussa.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.